Capoeira is a martial art rooted in Afro-Brazilian heritage and of global recognition. This cultural expression emerged around 300 to 400 years ago in colonial Brazil. At the time, around 2.5 to 3 million Africans were enslaved and forcibly brought to work in Brazil. Most of them belonging to the tribes of the coast of West Africa. The general language in Brazil at the time was the Tupi, an indigenous idiom spoken more widely than Portuguese in most of the territory. It's mostly accepted that the term capoeira, by the way, comes from Tupi, capoeira, meaning low brush or cleared vegetation, which designates areas where enslaved Africans used to train and hide during those years. In colonial times, enslaved people developed ways to continue the training of this martial art, ways of continue it without being completely banned by their oppressors. For example, they included musical instruments, the most popular of them, the berimbau, an Angolan origin instrument made of wooden bow, a steel string, a gourd, and a stick. This is the instrument that commands the rhythm, the game, and the rituals of capoeira. Enslaved people also included dance elements like the ginga, a sideways swinging that simulates lack of balance to masquerade the intention of the capoeirista, the capoeira practitioner. They also conceived that movements should avoid physical contact to allow that the synchronized performance disguise the fight as a dance. Finally, capoeiristas also incorporated aesthetic ways as the circles of people called rodas, where each practitioner, shoulder to shoulder, celebrates different strikes, styles, and impressive acrobacies. However, no matter what, capoeira has always been persecuted, prohibited, and criminalized. Even after colonization ended, even after slavery was abolished, it was only legalized in 1927. However, from the 1970s onwards, global diasporas of capoeiristas would spread the art worldwide. Today, capoeira is present in over 160 countries with more than 8 million active practitioners of this ancestral knowledge. Capoeira is also a monumental economic force, generating jobs, music, events, tourism, presentations, apparel, competitions, the growing market of roughly $150 million per year. Capoeira is in fact a game, a dance, and a fight. This conceptual imprecision is intentional since the beginning to distract repressive forces, preserve freedom, and keep capoeira always resilient against any form of blockage to its existence. My guest today is one of the many figures in the centuries-old story, another of the chosen individuals of capoeira around the world. Under the guidance of his mestres, he developed technique, graduated, learned Portuguese, and asked them permission to become an instructor himself, to start his own business where he now teaches capoeira in San Francisco. He overcame difficulties, obstacles, and stereotypes to build a community to whom he's fully devoted. I went to his studio, pulled up a chair, and chat with him right where rodas de capoeira take place. We discussed some of his life experiences, his reverence for the art, and some of the most challenging lessons learned as a business founder of this prestigious martial art. Come along, cause this conversation is nothing less than unmissable. Hi, Jesus.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, welcome. Welcome to the San Francisco Capoeira Academy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for sharing some of your time with me.
Absolutely.
And speak a little bit of your story. I would like to start with something different from what I generally do at first. I call you Jesus. Jesus is Jesus.
It sounds weird in Portuguese, I'm sure. Yeah.
Jesus,
as it does in English, honestly.
Right, is the word Jesus for Portuguese, would be Jesus for Spanish. And this is your capoeira name or nickname, whatever is the official term. I would like you to enlighten me about it. I would like you to start with your name and how you came to the Jesus term.
Right. Yeah. So my government name is Eamon. So that's what my family calls me too. And I'm a practitioner of capoeira, which, as you know, is an Afro-Brazilian martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobatics, music, and self-defense. And capoeira has a very interesting history because in Brazil, it was actually illegal up until, I believe, the 1930s. And so as a result of that, it was a street art that was practiced by people who were kind of living outside of the mainstream society. And a lot of times, since what they were doing was illegal, they didn't want to be known by their government names. And so they would use nicknames, street nicknames. And so in some groups, such as in my group, Capoeira Angola Palmares, we have kept that tradition alive. And a lot of times you will earn a nickname around in your first 6 months to a year in capoeira. And sometimes it's something very deep, like you have a very spiritual quality and you'll be named after a spirit animal like a bear or a tiger or something like that. And sometimes, in my case, you just had long hair and your first teacher thought you looked like that very stereotypical painting of Jesus that everybody knows. And he said, I'm going to call you Jesus. And then I didn't really know what I was getting into, but here I am 18 years later. And a whole bunch of people know me as Jesus. So
and then you embrace that at some point.
Yeah.
I assume it's like, you know what, I can't fight. Let me just own it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. So far, how would you like to be called in our conversation?
Well, you know, Silas, I've known you for a while, and I first encountered you in capoeira, so I'm fine with you calling me Jesus for this podcast.
That's great for me, and it's also a sign of respect in the capoeira world when you call a mestre by the name, when you call an instructor by the name. Let's keep with Jesus.
Sounds good.
So I would like to start with a few questions, and as we work together, you have some clarity on that. A big part for whatever enterprise or venture someone is facing is related to the amount of experience and purpose. I'll put them in order, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to talk about the experience component of your journey.
Sure.
Right? Let's start with an opening question. What is the first memory from your childhood or teenage years that comes to mind and still influences the way you see the world today?
Yeah, so I love this question. I love that it's not even like, when did you think of the business? It's really about my character. And I thought of two moments, two different sides of me that influenced my interest in capoeira. So one is when I was very small. I was on a camping trip with my parents. I was probably 4 years old.
4 years old, wow.
Yeah, we were in Utah. And one morning, well, we used to go camping a lot, and my parents were making breakfast, and I had wandered out into this meadow. It was filled with flowers, and I was in my sleeping bag still. And we're kind of a hippie family. And my mom came out and asked, what are you doing? And I told her, I'm hugging the world. So I've always had this very poetic and artistic side, even though it's not maybe something that I always get to express in my day-to-day life. And and I have a lot of care for my surroundings, you know. And the other part of me is that growing up in the city, San Francisco, it was a really different place when I was a kid than it is now. And there wasn't always safety and security all the times. And I took the bus all over the city. And if you didn't watch your surroundings and look over your shoulder, you could get in trouble with some of the tough kids, or worse, you know. And I think everybody my age grew up here at some point had their pockets padded and had to give up their bus fare and these kind of things, or navigate the type of people that were staying on the corner in your block and everything, doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. And capoeira, because of where it comes from and its philosophy, really speaks to that side of me too. The one that's has a concern with security, personal self-defense, but also community security. And I think those two stories kind of illustrate where I'm coming from in capoeira. Is like, I love beautiful things, I love aesthetic things, but I also have this side that's more practical, and I'm also connected to the self-defense side of capoeira for sure.
That's beautiful. Capoeira has this paradox of being pretty immersed in art components. You have music, you have this dance frame, but at the same time, in the end of the day, it's a very effective martial art, right? And the historical part,
I think Brazilians probably in my experience, understand that more. And at this point in time, I think capoeira has a lot of respect in Brazil as a self-defense art. There's so many people in MMA. Brazil has produced so many amazing fighters. And usually they're not going to practice purely capoeira when they go into the octagon. But if you look at their bios for a lot of the top fighters, they're going to have some capoeira experience in their history, along with BJJ and other arts. So, and every time that I've been to Brazil, my seniors in our group always told me, don't forget what the enslaved people used to capoeira for was to protect themselves, to defend themselves. So it's something that we keep in mind.
This podcast is brought to you by Peregrine Growth, the business advisory and boutique accelerator helping founders worldwide gain clarity, build strategy growth, and scale with confidence. If you're ready to level up your business and join a global community of founders on the rise, visit peregrinegrowth.com and apply today. Now, let's get back to the episode. As we evolve, your whole journey as a founder, I believe that this is a life choice that's not connected with a circumstantial situations. It's not that someone wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I'm going to turn myself into an entrepreneur out of the blue, right?
Yeah.
This is a sum of special events in your life. On that matter, I would like to ask you, which experiences led you to become a founder, in your opinion? Tell me a little bit about your story, original ecosystem, anything that you believe would lead you to the decision of own your own business.
So for the San Francisco Capoeira Academy, this is very much a passion project for me. I have another job. I'm actually also self-employed in my other job, but I really didn't have any experience as an entrepreneur per se and owning like a storefront type of business. It's a completely new experience. And it was something that I came to out of necessity because I loved capoeira so much and it was taking so much of my time. And I was gradually taking on more responsibility in terms of teaching the students of our group. And at a certain point, when you're investing 15, 20 plus hours a week in a hobby, it stops being a hobby, right? It's really a big part of your life. And I knew that in order to continue with that level of time investment and to grow the number of people practicing and to grow our community, I needed to take a bigger step and then really put some skin in the game. And it was clear to me that having a physical space that was dedicated to capoeira was going to be a very important part of that project. So that came into focus first. And the other part of the equation, though, is I have two kids. And they're currently 11 and 4. She just turned 11. I'm married. I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. This is not a place, it's not 1965 anymore. You can't just hang your shingle on the window and hope a few people come in. You have to be very strategic and intentional. Even if your primary motivation is your passion for the art, you need to have a way to make your livelihood work, and you need the venture to be financially healthful. And so keeping that in mind, I started researching different ways to create this model. And it turned out that the lowest hanging fruit for me and what was most achievable was a small business model. So I embarked on this journey of owning a small business. I've never been in business class, much less business school. I have never even had any sales job before. I worked in customer service and food service and that type of thing. So it was a completely new world. And I decided I need to put myself in a position where it's sink or swim. And success is the only option, at least for a while. And so I put myself in a position where I had to succeed. And I can say that I have big goals for this place, and my vision is even a lot bigger than what it is. But we've been going for 2.5 years now in this storefront capoeira studio, and it's going well. And we have a solid base of students, and the business is profitable. And I think I'm in a great position to expand even more in the future and reach my goals in capoeira while not going broke. In fact, being successful financially and healthy financially. Yeah.
Love that. And the fact that you pointed out elements like your family and responsibility of being successful to keep up with the presence in the city of San Francisco. It's so interesting to dive in your mindset and realize that most of the factors that push you ahead are not officially within the realm of businesses per se, right?
Yeah.
They are your elements of your life, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, Silas here, and I'm quickly jumping in to ask you a small favor. This podcast is brand new, so it means a lot if you subscribe on your favorite platform so you don't miss any new episode as soon as I launch them. And if you can, please like, comment, and rate it, which will help not only keep you up to date, but also let my show reach more people. Thanks for being here. Now let's get back to the episode. I've been working with entrepreneurs for years, and I've noticed that a large part of what they do, of the experience in their personal lives, and how they see the world really shines through in how they do business. With Jesus, it's no different. One of the core themes in almost everything he talks about is the subjacent idea of building community. I mention this because not only through my work with him in the EIG Founders, but also here on the podcast, I've had the opportunity to dive deeper into the topic and see how important this aspect is, not only in what he learned from his international travels, which he'll share shortly, but also in his own view of capoeira as an ancestral art over centuries. A little later on, we'll see how this is present in his business as well. It's not just from his perspective, but something that his own clients remind him of too. This is something so valuable in today's world, where people are increasingly looking for ways to connect and to belong. And belonging is definitely one of the core values in everything Jesus promotes. So stick around. Conversation keeps really good. My next question would be, what was the most meaningful trip inside or outside the US that contribute to your worldview and business perspective?
What an interesting question. I've had the privilege and opportunity to live in a few different countries in my adult life. I grew up here in San Francisco, but I've lived in Syria for 2 years.
Wow.
And I've spent a significant amount of time in East Africa, where my wife is from. I did study abroad in Ghana and West Africa. I think I've been to 9 or 10 different African countries in total, and I've spent a little bit of time in Brazil, not nearly as much as I would like to. I can say I've been in some of the poorest countries in the world. I've been in middle-income countries, developing countries. I've lived in political systems that are very repressive. I've been in places that are pretty free. And what I've seen in all of those places is that the thing that makes life really worth living is community integrity and the way that people connect to each other and rely on each other. And that was true in Syria in 2005, 2006. It's true in Kenya when I visit my wife's family. I think that we have that in the United States, as everywhere in the world does, but it's a weakness despite our high GDP and all of the great opportunities that we have here. We could learn a lot from some of these other places. And I think about where my wife's grandmother lives on a small farm in Western Kenya, and people live so close to the ground, and they're completely interconnected and reliant on each other. And there's not a huge amount of inequality, but some people have a little bit more, some people have a little bit less. And it's very normal to visit your neighbor and ask for a favor and to collaborate on things. And for those who have a little bit more, you're gonna employ the people who have a little bit less, and you have a richness of community connection. And they have a lot of problems there, for sure. Not everything is perfect. But one thing I don't see when I'm there is this epidemic of loneliness that we have in the United States. There is a warmth and communal texture to life there that for me is somewhat missing here. And I've seen the same in Brazil, although as I mentioned, I've spent less time there. So related to my business venture, and that's the terms I speak about it to you in the context of our conversation, but my passion, capoeira, the thing that it really offers people is a chance to connect and to create a mini version of that community connectedness in an environment that is often missing it. And in capoeira, in Afro-Brazilian culture, we have this, I'm gonna say we, even though I'm not Afro-Brazilian, but in capoeira, we have this idea of resistência, which is resistance to the dominant forces, the forces of oppression, the forces of disempowerment. And capoeira is an art of resistência. Resistência means resistance. And we come from a history of quilombos, which are small communities that formed of people who escaped from slavery, who lived in resistance to the colonial regime. And for me, my resistência is creating this community connection and empowerment that I observe it to be lacking in my surroundings. I think that's really powerful, and it's a little bit hard to explain in a 30-second soundbite, but I do believe that we're offering it here, and it's definitely what keeps me going.
I just love the way you identify community building as the core force in your view of what you're doing through your business. This sort of paves the way for what comes next. And I'm talking of impact here. Look, sometimes we create our businesses and the main goal of a founder is solve a problem, a very specific one. But as the founder dives in problem solving, comes close to a persona, to clients, perspectives, comes close to everything that it takes, founders realize they are tapping into something that's much bigger than that. You mentioned the community as a core force, and this really caught my eyes. So, do you have a story about the moment you realize that what you do through capoeira improves people's lives in a deeper way?
This is another question that I love. And one of the reasons that I like it is because you've asked me to see what this venture looks like through the eyes of my students, of my clients. As a capoeira practitioner, and I think probably anybody who has an enterprise, particularly like a martial arts type of enterprise, you tend to start off pretty focused on the type of student you want to develop, the transformations that you can affect in your student. And I actually had the opportunity to talk to you about this a lot through our consultation through Peregrine, that I need to start thinking about what this looks like through the eyes of this client who's showing up to my studio 4 or 5 times a week, and what's motivating that person who's super engaged and stays with me for years and years. And I started tuning my ears to that a little bit more since our conversations and noticing what people said. And time and again, I heard the word community come up. And I think we sometimes, also as martial arts teachers, we're focused like, did they get the movement correct and stuff like that? We're not always attuned to the significance that these practices have in our students and our clients' lives. There's one example, a little story. It's actually from a few years ago. Sometimes people come into the art for a while and then they're not able to stay for whatever reason. As a teacher, you can feel a sense of disappointment when somebody moves on and you don't know why, and something changes. But there was a student who trained with us for a year, and 4 or 5 years after he had stopped training, he was a mutual friend at that point, and we needed a favor. He was gonna help us out putting on an event. And we went to his apartment. And in my mind, this person had already perhaps forgotten about capoeira and moved on in their life. And we went into their room, and they didn't have a lot of decorations on the wall, but really displayed prominently was their light green cord from capoeira. And this is the first cord that you can get if you've been training for 6 months to a year. You're eligible in our system to get it. And I saw that this was so close to this person's identity, and just because they weren't training with me at that moment, it was a symbol of how significant their time in capoeira had been. And it's also, like, from a business perspective, it's a little telegram saying that this experience has a great amount of value for people, and we need to connect over time to people who have this person is not outside of our community because they're not training in the class as much as they used to. They're part of the network, the web of people who are connected to the studio and sustain it with their enthusiasm. And I need to find out other ways to call them in. I can maintain these connections. I'm not trying to train an army of Bruce Lees. I want to connect with people who want to experience a little bit more of their potential in life. Another anecdote is how we have a roda of the month. So a roda is a capoeira circle. And I had a newer student who came. I think they've been training for 2 or 3 months, and he came after the roda and he told me, to me it was a normal roda. We sang our songs, we played our games. He said that was one of the most beautiful experiences in my life. And we realized that things that we do every day can start feeling mundane, but what we have is something very special and precious here. And the challenge for me is, how do I communicate that with more people and get the word out and have them not just want to go see the circus, but actually come and live with the circus and train with the circus.
I'm getting a good gist of the impact that you cause, the social impact that's so intense, so consistent. But I'm very curious about how did that start? So how did the idea of leading your current business come up to you? When was the moment that you said, this should be born and I should lead this business and make it thrive?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit audacious, I think, that I ever had this idea. You know, this is a cultural art. It's a treasured art. The UNESCO, which is the cultural organization, has recognized the capoeira roda, the capoeira circle, as I'm forgetting the exact language, but an immaterial heritage of mankind. And I did not grow up in that culture. I'm from a different culture. So for me, it feels like a huge responsibility to be a faithful representative of this cultural art. I also reflect, sometimes I lie in bed at night and I go, like, oh my God, how did I have the audacity to think that I would be the person to open this space and to lead this group? And there's a lot of thought. I could talk to you about that for hours, probably just that topic. But what I think it comes down to is that my love for this art is very profound. And it started with a love for the movements. I was aware of capoeira since I was a kid because there's a lot of capoeiristas in the Bay Area in San Francisco. It started with a love for the movements, and then it moved on to also loving the music and ultimately feeling like I am an avatar of this untold history. And I am bringing forward this story, incredible story of resistance that comes from capoeira, and I'm spreading it around the world and sharing it. So that's kind of like my almost spiritual motivation for promoting this and thinking that I could put myself in a place of leading this. And then the other part of that is so brass tacks of what are the next steps for getting a few more students and making my passion financially sustainable. It really started during the pandemic when we were shuffling around and having to train outside, and it worked fine for a while. But I was like, I want something more permanent. I want a place where the musical instruments can live. And I know that feeling because I've been in other capoeira academies where you walk in and you feel like, I'm home. This is the place where the capoeira happens. So I started an alert on Craigslist in my price range. And for 2 years, I just monitored alerts from places that were in my price range and had some, in my square footage range. And I filtered it out. I saw this place and it kind of almost looked too good to be true. Exactly 650 square feet and a price range that was achievable to me. It was the first and only place that I came and looked at. And it was perfect. And I went home and I talked to my brother and we opened up a spreadsheet and I showed him the numbers. And I'm like, do you think I can do this? And he said, well, if I have 20 students paying this amount, what does it look like? And I thought, yeah, I think I can. And I think I have to try. I'm not going to be happy with myself if I didn't try. So on the other hand, I had a lot of support from my teachers who believed in me. And that is really important when you're practicing a cultural art, to feel that you have license from people who did grow up in the art, to be a representative and that they trust me.
Amazing. I was basically thinking of the EIG founders component,
Yeah.
vocation,
A
of finding a
vocation.
vocation.
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit more.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because you mentioned you
Yeah.
felt, how did I dare to do that? And part of myself was wondering, when you have a vocation, even if you don't want to get the path, you're gonna end up in the path, because
Yeah.
that's what you're supposed to do. And now we're gonna talk about 100% of business.
Let's
let's put the attention there, and I'm gonna give you the right nudges. So, Jesus, growth. Now I wanna shift into growth, and this is the conversation that gets me really on fire. Most people who look at founders' lives from an outside spot don't see themselves in this way. They don't believe it's possible.
Yeah.
So I want to explore this with you. What has been the hardest moment in your life as a founder? Something that permanently changed your posture in business or personal life?
So capoeira is something that attracts people with a very strong magnetism. People say it's like a virus, it gets in your veins and it never leaves. And people fall in love with it. But you'll see this time and time again. People come in to the practice at a moment when they have time to consider it, and they fall really strongly in love with it. And then their attendance may fall off at a certain point, or their engagement changes over time for a lot of very understandable reasons. I feel like if you go to one yoga class, even if you're not very good at yoga, you're gonna feel great afterwards. Capoeira is a little bit more frustrating to study because you're gonna be very aware. It's a lot of information, even just the movements, but then you add in the music and the language and all these other aspects. It takes a lot of time to study, and you have to have a lot of consistency to feel satisfaction with the outcome. What that means is the drop-in model for class completely has not worked for me, because you have people who would come in at one point and they're able to attend 3 times a week. If we had a drop-in fee and people are coming 3 times a week, the business is sustainable. But when you have ups and downs in attendance, it is absolutely gonna break your business to have a drop-in model available to students, unless you're charging a very, very high fee that probably reflects the business fundamentals of their engagement, but is not psychologically accessible to people. So having a monthly enrollment or even a yearly enrollment model has been the key to success for me, and a way to get people in the door and stay engaged through the ups and downs in their availability in their life. They have a kid, maybe they go through a period of 3 months when they're only coming to 1 class per month, but they continue to be a member and stay engaged with the curriculum and with the community, and still to derive benefit from it. And then they come back after that. And that has really sustained me also through downtimes in the year when attendance drops because people are on vacation and stuff like that. But we have an evenness to the enrollment, and that backstops the finances of the studio too.
And how was for you to deal with this instability? How did you feel that you could overcome those challenges?
It's a growing pain issue, because you're gonna have, because it's not common to have this model in the capoeira world. And so if you have a drop-in mentality with students and you transition to a monthly or yearly enrollment mentality, you are unfortunately going to lose the engagement of some students. And that's really, really scary. You have to trust people who have done it successfully. And it's a moment. That's what you asked about challenge. Wow, that is so scary, having to tell somebody these are the rules for enrollment. And in the beginning, you're really searching for additional clients and you don't want to lose this person. But I can promise this to anybody who's going down the same path: setting up those boundaries and creating a structure that supports the enterprise in the long term is the way to go. And if you cater to the people who are less engaged, and it's okay, doesn't make them bad people, but they aren't a good fit for a studio that needs to keep its doors open. If you cater to them, you're gonna be missing out on a bunch of other opportunities and potential students who, in the vocabulary that you use, are closer to the persona that is gonna be the people that are gonna be the engine that keeps the doors open and the community vibrant for the studio.
So keeping your framework, it's a matter of finding the right members of your community,
not any person necessarily.
You can think of it in terms of a filter. You can think of it in terms of attracting the right people. But it is fundamental to figure out who those people are. You don't know them yet. They're out there walking around the street. There's thousands of people go down the street every day, and some of them are the right people. So I'm always trying to fine tune that. Not just because I have finite money for advertising, I actually don't want a mob of 1,000 people coming into the studio, because then I have more filtration to do. I would like to attract the right people to come in the door so that it's easy to make sales and it's easy to welcome them in, and we feel a natural connection. They know where I'm coming from, I know where they're coming from.
That's beautiful. I love that. So Jesus, what do you believe have been the main turning point in the growth of your business in terms of strategy, sales, or management?
Yeah.
If you went through a very hard time at some point, what do you believe was a turning point that was responsible for a change of course?
Yeah. I'm gonna pick 3 different moments for this. I'm gonna make them short. One is, don't be afraid to charge the correct amount for the experience you offer, not just the services, because I'm not just teaching people capoeira movements. This is an entire experience, and I have free classes on a social basis for community outreach. I have financial aid for people, but I don't offer, even the intro is not free. There's a small fee because I want people to understand that has value. That's a mentality shift to change. Second is learning to be okay with selling your services, your experience. And I have a student, she's Brazilian, and she works in sales. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable trying to sell people. And she asked me, Jesus, do you believe in the product that you're selling? I'm like, more than anything in the world. And then she said, have confidence. You're not selling people a lemon. You're selling people something very beautiful. Be passionate about your sales process too. The third juncture relates to the advisory experience that I had at Peregrine with you, which was I had always been told that martial arts studios sell transformation, which to me was already a leap, because you think your initial thought is I'm selling training or something, or I'm selling skills. No, you're changing the person from the person they are now to this person that's capoeirista. And Silas, you helped me realize through the process we went through, that even wasn't getting to what I'm really selling here. I am selling and promoting community. That epiphany only happened a month and a half ago. So I can't tell you about the metrics of how that's affected the studio yet, but I can tell you it has already changed the tone of the group that I run here and the way that I interact with clients. And I believe has contributed to my ability to sign up a couple of new students in that time. Not only just sign people up, but sign people up who are here for the right reasons. So that was amazing.
That's awesome. That's amazing to hear. There's so much in my head. So look, thank you for the beautiful portrait of your journey. That's a magnificent and humbling example of how you embrace an ancestral art, an ancestral culture, and you embrace your vocation to bring this beautiful view of what you can do with all the elements that only belong to you. That's absolutely humbling to me and very inspiring. And I'd like to ask you, thinking about everything you've been through and how you have overcome challenges to get here, what message would you like to share with people today?
You know, what comes to mind, let me think if I can think of a good way to say this. I don't know if you've heard the phrase, if you build it, they will come. That's a very, very nice idea, but it's not true. And it's not true in and of itself. If you rent the space and hang the sign outside that says capoeira classes, you will, by default, get 5 to 8 students maybe who are interested in training. And that, unfortunately, is not enough to sustain a business or an enterprise. And this could work for nonprofits too. This just happens to be the model that I chose. I'm totally open to different models. Whatever the model is, you need to do a lot more than just build it. You really need to consider the perspective of the potential clients out there and what they're seeing when they walk in the door and what would cause them to even walk in the door. And you need to work overtime to get out of your own head and your own ideas of what it should be to understand the perspective of the client pool, potential client pool that's out there, to understand what their wants, needs, and desires are. And you're gonna have to constantly tweak your approach to make it successful. I think that especially people in the capoeira space, I would love for them to think about this more, because we have boundless passion and a lot of super noble motivations for what we're doing, but we have a little trouble seeing how our art looks to people who are not already in it. And not everybody is gonna come into it, but some of those people are potential future capoeiristas, and we need to change our perspective and then build our enterprise around what will actually attract them. So don't think that building it is enough. It's not just if you build it, they will come. Or I need to come up with another pithy sentence that says, but you have to constantly revise and build as well. And constantly, don't throw a party and not promote your own party. If you have a really good party that you're throwing, you need to get out there and hit the streets with the pamphlets. People are not gonna know about your party if you don't do that. Self-promotion can be done with humility and with integrity, but you need to do it.
I'm Silas, and this was an episode of the Peregrine Growth Cast, your podcast where founders, investors, and explorers share stories about business, travel, and meaningful living. Experience, impact, and grow. Visit peregrinegrowth.com and apply for EIG Founders, my accelerator program designed to transform your path and business. See you next time. Talk soon.